Michael Russo from the Star Tribune. We're here with Jim Souhan, who's down in Florida. We're doing our weekly podcast on SouhanUnfiltered.com. And Jim is coming to us from the press box at Hammond Stadium from Fort Myers. We sent Jim down to Florida to go scout out Sean Bergenheim, the new Minnesota Wild winger who just was 70 miles from you, Jim, in South Florida, playing for the Florida Panthers. And what do you know about Bergenheim, Jim?
Well, he was, the Star Tribune, being very enterprising, did send me down here to scout him, do a life story on him, and he left right before I got here. So it didn't really work out very well.
The timing just
impeccable. I am in the press box at Hammond Stadium. It's the Twins' spring training complex. The joint is beautiful. They fixed it up to be I always liked it here, but this is phenomenal. And while we're getting rolling here, Michael, we're going to talk hockey. We're going to talk KG, AP, Torrey Hunter, all those other things. Let me point out that I'm doing it from a sun-soaked ballpark instead of my usual haunts. Our sponsors, the local in downtown Minneapolis, Kieran's Irish Pub in downtown Minneapolis, O'Gara's Bar and Grill in St. Paul. This is a little different experience. I love all those joints, but I don't get sunburned in any of them.
Where's Lavelle, by the way? Is he right there grinding next to you?
It's past noon, so he's at the beach.
Oh, okay. I figured. Did you see the podcast?
You got to catch Lavelle early.
Did you see the video that he did with Mike Rand, by the way, the other day?
I avoid all Lavelle videos. Was it spectacular?
I just saw the outtake pictures that Mike Rand tweeted, and there was one shot of just them, side by side mugs of each of them with Lavelle picking his teeth.
Well, and that was probably the highlight.
Yeah. So I tweeted it out, and I retweeted, and I said that he's obviously picking the cigar tobacco right out of his left tooth there. So.
Honestly, I think Lavelle is evidence that genetics have a lot to do with life and longevity. I mean, he should be dead. He gets up early, he covers baseball, he goes to a beach, he drinks, he goes to a cigar bar, he smokes 18 cigars, gets home late, does it all again the next day, and I'm the guy who's sick. How does that work? I'm the guy with the head cold.
You are always
not
sick.
Fair.
You know what it is? It's that we dress like normal human beings, and everywhere you are, you're bundled up, so your body temperature just doesn't know how to handle it when it's a little cold out.
I think it's the reverse. I think it's because I'm so old and feeble. I'm the old guy who always has the sweater on. I gotta bundle. And hockey, that's the thing is I love going to the XL Energy Center. I love that venue. I like covering the Wild. I like the team. I find it to be the last couple of years they've been very entertaining, but I freeze. Where we sit in the press box, I'm sitting under like an air conditioner. I'm bald. I'm old. It freezes me.
Well, the Wild were not entertaining last night, Jim. You missed by far their most disappointing loss in months, 2-1 to the Edmonton Oilers. Just an unacceptable loss to a team that had won 4 games against the Western Conference in 36. And exactly what Mike Yeo feared. I think the Wild, I don't know. I'm always fascinated. I'm actually interested to get your take on this because this happens in all of pro sports where a team just lays an egg against a by far inferior competition. And there was a point in that game, the second and third periods, where the Wild dominated, but they had a terrible first period, and it cost them the game because they ran into a good goalie, and the Oilers packed it in and things like that. But how is it possible when you put yourself in such a great position to be in the top 8, you play so well for so many, weeks, you have this ability now to continue to gain ground, especially when Calgary loses and you can now go 3 points up into 8th, and yet the entire team comes out and plays like crap in the first period. How this happens all the time in sports. I mean, why do you think that stuff happens?
Because sports still involve human beings. Yep. It's that simple. And it's why predictions are always ridiculous and are so often wrong. No matter how we're in this era where everybody wants sports to be logical. They want sports to conform to statistical norms. They want everything to be predictable and predictive. And it's not. It never will be because you're talking about biorhythms. You're talking about emotions. You're talking about chemistry. You're talking about, sleep or lack of sleep. You're talking about motivation on a daily basis. I mean, you and I don't do exactly the same job every day. And there are days, there are days we get fired up and the days we just get through it. Well, athletes are the same. No matter how much you pay them, no matter how good they happen to be, they're going to have good days and bad days, or good days and lesser days. And, so it's like Amanda Zowie B, right? She comes, completely different sport, completely different level of competition. she's a National Player of the Week one week, and then she goes on the road and has a terrible game. Well, it's almost predictable. It's like, and since I'm sitting in Hammond Stadium down here, I'll give you the baseball thing. When I covered the Twins in the 90s, if the Twins had a game where they hit 5 home runs and scored 16 runs, of course, the stupid TV question after the game was, boy, this gets you on a roll, and TK would always just cringe because his take was, well, you just had a game where scoring runs felt easy. You're destined to have a bad game the next day. You're going to face a better pitcher the next day. It's not going to be as easy, and you're going to be reminded why it's not that easy. Again, as long as sports are played by humans and not computers, you're going to have letdowns no matter what you do to guard against them.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. And it's kind of, on a sports writing analogy, the day after their big win, I actually woke up. Yeah, I emailed Chris Miller. I'm like, what do you need today? A C1 story, or can I mail today in? Because I was just dragging. Daniel Winnick, by the way, just traded to the Penguins, as reported by Darren Dreger. Wow. For anybody that's listening. And the most disappointing part of last night's game for me is just the fact that this team, that you can guard against this, and yet that you can come out and look so lethargic and sloppy at the very beginning. And like you said, I mean, I talked to Craig Leopold today because if you're a Wild fan out there and you heard the Wild had it might seem like just a nothing news today with the minority owner change, but that is actually very, very big news for the Wild organization, because this guy, Matt Hunsizer, is somebody that he's not just your typical minority owner. He's tried to buy the Phoenix Coyotes, St. Louis Blues. He's kicked tires to be a minority owner in Carolina and Dallas and things like that. So for him to come on here and buy the 21% stake of Phil Falcone, who's been a bit of a headache for this organization for a while, it is big news. But I talked to Leopold today, and he said to me, he's like, and he said to Yo before the game, he's like, I don't know if I've ever been so nervous for a game. I just know this is not going to just go, according to plan. And Yo's like, I know. And the reason why is because you are facing an Edmonton team that absolutely were, humiliated by the Wild a couple days before. He had fans throwing jerseys on the ice. They had talked for 2-3 days about how they wanted to get payback on the Wild. And that's, you had Devin Dubnyk here, who they wanted to show, they could beat. It was just one of those games. It was kind of that perfect trap game, but I'll tell you, I was shocked. A lot of people asked me that yesterday on the radio and different radio shows that I did. Do you think this is a classic trap game? And I'm like, yeah, it's the quote-unquote trap game, but I just don't know if the Wild have that in them anymore, because they've been so good lately and so on top of it, and their first periods have been so good that I just didn't really even consider that the Wild would come out and look like that in the early going. And it's just a shame that, you go down 2-1 in the first period and that's it. Despite dominating every moment of the second and third periods, just can't get another puck behind a goalie that's been an absolute sieve this season.
And that also speaks to the nature of the sport, too, yep. Because we see in the NBA all the time, the superior team will not expend a lot of energy in the first or second quarters, even the third, but if they have to turn it on, they can, and they can hand the ball to their best player, and he can make things happen, and the best player on the court has a marked advantage and a marked impact on the game. And in baseball, if you got the better pitcher, you have a market advantage. Football, if you have the better quarterback, you have the market advantage, no matter how well you play in the first quarter. In hockey, it's such an energy game, and it's such a fluke game so often in how goals are scored that if you can't, we've talked about this before, you can't play hockey a half step behind. Now the best players in basketball can dog it at certain times in the game. They can dog it at certain portions of the game and still be dominant when they have to be. In hockey, you can't play the game from half step behind, and you can't hand the ball to your best player in crunch time and just have him win it for you either.
Yep. According to Pierre LeBrun, the Winnipeg Jets acquired Yuri Tlusty, and I will tell you that one thing I was going to report tomorrow is that the Winnipeg Jets were the other team that was hot after Sean Bergenheim, and I think this is totally in reaction to the Bergenheim trade yesterday. By far, Sean Bergenheim is a better player than Yuri Tlusty. I will say basically what happened yesterday, stuff I've learned here today, talking to other GMs, scouts, and things like that all morning, is that essentially yesterday morning the Florida Panthers sent out an email to all 30 GMs, all 29 other GMs, and basically said, today is the day we're trading Sean Bergenheim. Let me know your best offer by the end of the day. I want a second-round pick. He was being offered force. He was being offered B-level prospects and things like that. And when I say he, Dale Talon. And finally, Chuck Fletcher stepped up with the third-round pick. So Chuck was never going to give his second for Bergenheim. And at the end, I will say that all day yesterday, I thought there was going to be a trade coming. And then when this trade happened, I thought that this trade must have been consummated earlier in the day, and that both teams decided to wait till 6:55 because they both had 7 o'clock games and didn't want to have a distraction. I did learn late last night that trade literally was consummated about 6:30 p.m., and that's why it never got out. Bergenheim makes a lot of sense for the Wild. Total depth player, though. Winger that has had unbelievable success in the playoffs, but is a guy that has been unbelievably injury prone. But he's a forechecking madman. He very thick body, not nearly as physical as Cal Clutterbuck, but kind of built that way. So he gets in there and he goes to the net and he's willing to go into areas that cause, frankly, the injuries that he always seems to sustain. Things went south in Florida a couple years ago when he filed a grievance against the team when they decided not to pay him during the 2012-13 lockout. They basically said that he got hurt during the lockout playing a couple games in Finland, and he said, no, I got hurt during their playoff run the year before, and he went to neutral arbitrator, won that grievance, got his money that they owed him, but that, of course, put him in a real bad stance in the team that he still played for, and then all of a sudden Gerard Gallant came in here, didn't like him for some reason, and had basically limited his ice time and scratched him a lot, and he asked to be traded. So this is a move that is your total. This is the type of move I expected from the Wild, a total depth move up front. It does maybe create some expendable players, and we're going to see now if the Wild go to look at a defenseman now.
And do you like the trade?
I like the trade. I mean, I will say I'm not the biggest Bergenheim fan, but I will say I am a big Bergenheim fan of the guy that I've seen in the playoffs for Tampa. I mean, I remember all the breakaways and the goals that he had, and his numbers, his goals per game in the playoffs compared to what he is in the regular season is unbelievable. So what the Wild are going to have to impress upon him right now is this is the playoffs. Play the way that you do in the playoffs right now. I think it's imperative that the Wild put him in a position to succeed, not just a fourth line guy. Put him in a third line role, and give him that chance to actually succeed. But what that's going to do is maybe put lower guys like Schrader and Fontaine and things like that. But they've got to give him a chance. But I will say the one thing that, and I hope Bergenheim, and there was a conference call with him today, I hope he is honest with Mike Yeo when he shows up in Nashville tomorrow, and and tells him basically, one, where his fitness level is, but two, what is his ability right now to play at a high level. This is a guy that has not played a lot. He has been scratched since the last game at the Wild on February 12th, and to expect him to now just go in and be the Sean Bergenheim that we might see in a couple weeks might be very tough. So he's, if he is in that position where he can only play a fourth line role right now because of the, his timing and things like that, he's going to have to be honest with Mike and let him know what the heck's going on, with his, with his game right now. Because I can tell you from, knowing Gerard Gallant as well as I do, and shooting the breeze with him a couple weeks ago, something was not right there in terms of their relationship. And he didn't have a whole lot of respect for Bergenheim's game, which is a little shocking because Bergenheim's reputation in the NHL, every stop he's ever been at, has been a guy that you can really respect and rely on in a game. He's, your typical Finn, works hard and things like that.
Well, they lose a game they shouldn't have lost, and now they have. Then really the soft part of the schedule is over for a little bit. They got to go to Nashville, as you've written about. Nashville only has 3 home losses on the season. The schedule gets tougher. What are you expecting here for this next stretch?
Well, I think that they're going to have to come out and respond tomorrow, and my gut says that they will. They usually at least compete in Nashville. But every team seems to lose there. I mean, it is, they have got, if there's ever a game that you could better jump on Rene early, it is tomorrow night. The Wild are going to have to invest in the game, as Mike Yeo likes to say. My gut says that Kyle Brodziak moves back to the middle and Eric Holla will be scratched. Holla was, just look at that second goal, that winning goal yesterday. That was 100% his fault. And that's one reason why I think he was disciplined the rest of the game. He snapped his stick in half after the goal and all sorts of stuff. So he basically played 6 minutes. So tomorrow's a game that they're going to have to grind out. And I hate to say it, but Eric's not that type of player, at least in Mike Yo's eyes. So my guess is Brodziak moves to the center, Bernheim goes to wing, and they're going to have to respond. And if you can somehow, I hate to say get a split on this trip, but you got to win in Colorado. But to me, I mean, if you can get 3 out of 4 points, that'd be a huge win when you're talking about a team that has lost 3 times in regulation all year long. So we'll see. If they can respond tomorrow, that'd be an amazing accomplishment if you could do that in Nashville.
So 2 years ago, Zucker ends up being kind of the short, fast, rising wing who helps them out. Last year was Hall. Could it be Schrader this year?
Yeah, I mean, the way he is playing and the chemistry he seems to have with Vanek is pretty good. I mean, Vanek continues to be an exasperating player to watch. And again, last night, he scores the only goal of the game, and yet, you come away and you're just like, my God, shoot the puck, stop overpassing, work harder, be stronger along the wall. I mean, there are pucks that go by him on the wall that are just he doesn't even try for. And so, Schrader at least gives you that, one, the speed aspect on that line, but somebody that also absolutely works his butt off for an undersized guy. So I will say this, and I probably shouldn't say this because I haven't really reported it yet, but
that's what we love about the podcast.
I know.
You tell stuff you're not supposed to tell us on the podcast.
But I don't think Jason Zucker's out for the season. I think Jason Zucker is going to be, at some point in the next little while, making his return. Not in the next little while, but he will not be out for the season.
Wow. And how about John Carter?
Ryan Carter is.
I'm sorry. Did I say John? I'm sorry. I just it's bad movie stick in my head.
Ryan Carter actually seems like it could be a little longer here. The fact that he's still week to week when he was supposed to be back, really by really a month, I think says something that this was a little more major. They're really keeping this under wraps. I think it's a shoulder, but again. And when I say Zucker's going to be back, I'm talking like late March, early April, but he is working out hard. There's going to be plans for him to go on the ice at some point. The problem with the Zucker thing is that this will be a doctor decision. I mean, this is, with the type of surgery he had, there's going to have to come a real medical clearance where they're going to have to be absolutely sure that when he takes a hit, that he's going to actually be able to take that hit. And so I just think the timetable is probably going to be 2 months instead of 3 months. And that's good because that puts them in play for the playoffs.
Right. Why don't we switch from hockey to some other sports right now, and then we'll come back and I'll ask you Twitter questions, which always end up being really good hockey questions. We'll do that. What do you want to hit first here?
Let's talk baseball. What's going on down there? How's Paul Molitor's first week on the real job?
I said this before I got down here, and it's been reaffirmed to me since I've been here. I don't think he will have any trouble doing all the important things a manager does. He has commanded the clubhouse. He has respect for the players. He's a genius in terms of strategy. He's a genius in terms of seeing things on the field other players don't see. The veteran players love him. In fact, some of the veteran players were lobbying me for Molitor to be manager last year, which tells you something. The young players love him because Molitor was the guy who, kind of the special assignment guy who went down and worked with Buxton and Sano and Meyer and all these guys. They're wowed by him. Guys who don't even know he's a Hall of Fame player are impressed by him after they talk to him. I think he's going to be a great manager. I really do. The one thing that's going to be interesting is Paul was I covered Paul as a player. I've covered him when he got his 3,000th hit, and Paul carried himself not with arrogance, but with what would the word be? He carried himself with kind of a certain regal presence. He carries himself like a star. Mm-hmm. And what he's going to have to get used to is, as a baseball manager, he's going to get second-guessed every day. And he's going to get asked impertinent questions every day. And everything he says could turn into a headline. It's like we were in the class the other day, and we all figured Phil Hughes would be the opening day starter. And that's one of those things but you can't really report until somebody confirms it. And Paul just kind of casually said, and it looks like, Phil will probably be taking the ball on day one. And our reporter was like, okay, that means you have your rotation. And started asking all these follow-up questions, acting like it was a big deal. And, Paul was like kind of shocked and almost taken aback, like, well, you're really going to treat that like it's a big news story? Well, when the manager says something, It's a big news story.
Right.
And that's what's going to be interesting to see. Is Paul having to deal with this stuff on a daily basis? What his patience for it will be, whether it will sour him in any way. Right now it's all great because we're treating him like a Hall of Fame player who's a brilliant guy and has been very entertaining to talk to about the game. But, I'm really interested in that because Tom Kelly, when he's a third base coach, was thought to be one of the great guys to talk to around the Twins. And he got the manager's job. He got so sick of that routine so quickly that he became, by reputation, the worst manager to deal with in the big leagues. Now, by the time I covered him, he treated me very well, and I have not only did I not have any personal complaints, he treated me exceptionally well and taught me a lot of baseball, but he wasn't great with everyone. I'm just going to be interested in how Paul handles all the things about the job that he never thought about, because he's already, in his mind, been managing for years.
Yeah, it just, especially in a 162-game baseball season where things are just so monotonous on an everyday basis, there's days I just remember from my time covering the Marlins that, whatever Jack McKeon said got in the paper because I had nothing else. It was like,
right.
There's just every single day, whatever he said became the notebook. And, it will be interesting to watch somebody that, when you're that type of guy, you think that you know everything. And then when you're being questioned by guys like Jim Souhan, that's got to be a tough thing.
Right, and actually, I will probably be one of the easier guys for him because I know, let's face it, there are people who manage and coach professional sports who might have great experience, but might not necessarily be the best thinkers. Let's just face it. I thought Ryan Gardenhire, for most of his tenure as the Twins manager, was a very good organizational manager. He had the best interests of the long-term interests of the organization. He worked his way up through the organization. He was had good relationships with the key people in the organization, but he wasn't a great strategist. And he'd get really flabbergasted when you ask him a question. And but no matter how many times he got flabbergasted, you had to keep asking because some of his moves didn't really make a lot of sense. Molitor, it's going to be different because, frankly, there's not going to be ever anybody in that room with Molitor who's as smart as Molitor is about baseball, but we're still going to have to ask him, and this is a conversation I used to have with Tom Kelly, because Tom Kelly thought every question about strategy was a second guess, and I had to explain to him, sometimes even if I agree with you what you did 100%, or even if I don't know whether to agree with you or not, I'm just asking because I can't assume I know what you're thinking. I need to get you on the record telling me what you're thinking. And a lot of baseball managers don't get that. They think any question about strategy is a blatant second guess.
Yeah. Now, I do that too, because when you've done this, when you've covered the same sport for 20 years, pretty much every single thing when something happens, you know why, right? And yesterday's a perfect example when they throw Spurgeon on IR for no reason. They're opening up a roster spot, so you want to write that it's to open up for a trade, but you kind of got to at least ask. And so a lot of times you'll text the GM or the assistant GM and say, "Hey, am I thinking this?" And they'll be like, the answer. And I'm like, "Yeah, but I need you to tell me that is
exactly."
I can't just assume.
That's journalism. You need confirmation.
And it is the same thing with Mike Yeo. I know why Eric Hollow was benched yesterday, but I kind of want to make sure that what I saw is what is the reason that this guy, one, was responsible for the goal, but two, did not act maturely after the goal. Had basically a fit on the ice, and when you're a young player like him, that's just not acceptable, and that's the type of thing that the coaches always see, and as Mike Yeo has always said, they treat the young guys with a higher standard because this is their one shot. And they've already screwed up their shot with Holla because Mike Yeo had the opportunity to scratch him in Montreal and have him sent back to the minors without waivers. He decided for that game he wanted to win the game, and that Holla gave him a good chance of winning. So he played him, and boom, that ship sailed, and now he's stuck here. And so, that's the type of thing with those situations. How's to deal with Torrey Hunter again?
Well, Torrey is my favorite guy of all time. And Eddie Guardado is a close second. So, honestly, I couldn't be happier. I always loved spring training. I always loved covering the Twins in spring training. It's always a very pleasant experience. But I've been, I tell you what, the last 4 or 5 years, I would say the last 3 years, I've walked in the spring training clubhouse going, man, who the hell am I going to talk to? Okay, great. There's Perkins, who's really a great guy and has been great with me. He tells me all kinds of stuff. He's just incredibly open with me. But you can't go to a closer on every situation, you know. And Dozier's a great guy. But those guys, you know, they aren't the dominant personalities in the clubhouse. They're good figures in the clubhouse. Torrey Hunter is the dominant figure in this clubhouse already. He was the first day he walked in. He already has Aaron Hicks and Byron Buxton listening to him for hours every day. He already has them out there doing his workouts. He's already given them hitting tips. He is the dominant figure in this clubhouse, and that is a wonderful thing because they have a lot of good guys in there. Perkins, Dozier, Hughes is a great guy. Pelfrey's a great guy. Santana's a really professional, good young player. Plouffe has grown up a lot. Hicks is a nice guy. They have good guys in there, but if you don't have a dominant figure, if you don't have somebody who can create laughter in a baseball clubhouse the way Torrey can, you feel like a dead-ass team every time everybody walks in the clubhouse, and that has completely changed. Now you have Hunter and Guardado going around, starting conversations, cracking jokes, pulling young players together to talk. It's completely changed the dynamic.
Not to interrupt you on back to hockey. Just one thing I wanted to point out is that the Tolusti trade to Winnipeg was a third-round pick and a fifth or a sixth in 2015. And the reason why I find that interesting is, again, from sources this morning, I was told Winnipeg was kind of runner-up on Bergenheim, and the price for Bergenheim was a third. And that just almost shows you how desperate Winnipeg was to get a forward because they badly needed a winger. Continue your thoughts. Sorry, Jim.
Well, no, it's okay. But, when I started covering the Twins, the clubhouse was dominated by Puckett, and that meant the clubhouse was a blast. Then I covered the Torrey Hunter and Young Twins in the early 2000s, and the clubhouse was a blast. Mm-hmm. And then you transitioned to Kadire maybe being the central figure and Morneau, who aren't quite like Puckett and Hunter, but they're really good guys with good personalities who liked being kind of key figures, and the clubhouse was still very good. And then from basically when Morneau stopped being a key figure and was dealing with a concussion up until this spring, you walk into the clubhouse and I would have other former players who stop by the clubhouse come by and pull me aside and say, "What the bleep is going on in here? I mean, this place is dead. You can't have a winning team like this." And I don't want to get deep into this, but listen, there's a chicken and egg thing. Do winning clubhouses win because they have a certain culture, or do you, after a team wins, do you look at it and say, okay, they must have won because they have the culture, and you have it backwards? You don't win because you have good personalities in the clubhouse, but I think if you're good, having the right personalities in the clubhouse can nudge people in the right direction, toward playing the right way, toward playing with energy. I know the 2006 Twins, one of the reasons they turned it around, they were terrible for 2 months and they were the best team in baseball for 4 months. One of the reasons they turned it around was because guys like Mike Redmond were nudging Nick Punto to get out there and play every day, where Nick Punto the rest of his career was always nursing an injury, always taking the extra day. Mike Redmond was pushing Joe Mauer to play extra days. And all of a sudden, that contributes to them having a great team because they have guys out there playing hard instead of taking an extra day in the training room. It matters to some degree, and I think, the internal view with the Twins, and one of the reasons Gardner got fired, is that last year they scored a lot more runs than people think, a lot more runs than they probably should have with Mauer being hurt a lot and having a down year. And they felt like the fielding wasn't as good as it should have been. The pitching and maybe the use of pitchers wasn't as good as it should have been. They felt like it should have been a 500 team last year. And they feel like with Molitor taking over, with Hunter back, with Guardado around, with young players having gained another year of experience, with the prospects being a year closer to the big leagues, they don't see any reason they can't be over 500 this year and be really good by next year.
Right. What do you actually, why don't you go there? Sean, you want to interrupt here?
I just because, Jim, and not that I don't love you and you guys are hot on this, but I said, hey, we might want to promote the network a little bit. So if you don't mind me cutting in right now,
go right ahead.
Just push everybody out of the way and promote the network real quick. I'll buzz through just a few things. So you are listening to Michael Russo and Jim Souhan on the Alive and Social Network. You can find this show at SouhanUnfiltered.com. Please subscribe and share. It's on iTunes and iHeartRadio as well. Several different shows on the network. One of the newest ones is Twin Cities Hit Show every morning at 9:30 in the morning, featuring Rusty Gatenby of longtime KSTP TV fame, Courtney McLean and Chuck Gollop. We also have the Jeff Dubé Show, which is on every day around 5. I say that because today they'll be on at 5:30 down at Bennett's location. We also do live band karaoke on Friday nights. That is at 9:30 at night, actually 9
That's
o'clock
very
at
fun.
night. And it's a lot of fun. It's one of those things that until you go see it and hear it, you won't believe it.
And you'll get to see Sean Bernard on stage.
Yeah, if my wife lets me out of the house again Friday night, I might just belt another one out this Friday. But a lot of great shows on the network. We just a couple others to mention are the Minnesota Pubcast, the Rusty Gatenby Review. We have a new show as well called Eat This Twin Cities, which is doing quite well right out of the gate. And with that, I'll send it back to you, gents.
Jim, what do you think of the whole? You mentioned good clubhouse guys, good locker room guys. What do you think of the whole thing when when a guy is available, but immediately you start to hear as a sports writer, oh well, he's a bad guy, so they'll never get him. And how much should organizations look at stuff like that? There are guys that are available right now in the NHL. One that was traded today. That is, doesn't have a good reputation in the league, and I know scared Minnesota off from that guy. I'm talking about Winnick and things like that. What do you think of that? Can a bad, quote unquote, bad guy be controlled in a room and take down a room, or do you think you can overcome it if he's a good enough player?
I think it depends on the sport, and it depends on where that team is. I like the Twins tend to bring in good guys. Listen, they brought in some real jackasses too. But the jackasses haven't been able to dominate the room. If you're a really good team and you're one player away, and that one player is a jackass, but he might be able to help you win it all, people will just say, screw it, let's go win the extra games. Mm-hmm. If you're a young team that's developing and trying to develop your culture as you move along, I don't think a jackass would fit in well in the Twins clubhouse right now. Right. Ricky Nolasco is an iffy guy, but he's very quiet. He keeps to himself, so he's not. What you don't want is somebody ruining players' attitudes toward management, players' attitude toward the manager, players' attitude toward the public. You don't want a guy ruining the young players' view of that. You don't want somebody creating dissension or problems with the club staff. Now, like the Twins right now, I don't think it would be a good idea to bring a jackass in. And I think it's great they brought Torrey and Guardado in, two great guys. In football, I think you can bring in a jackass because things are so divided. You talk about a football team, but it's really three football teams. There's offense, there's defense, there's special teams. And, one voice doesn't dominate the room. And there are so many. You can't have a 53-man roster without having some jackasses. And it's a violent sport, short careers. Even if you bring in a jackass, he probably ain't going to have a long career with you. And if he is a jackass like Randy Moss, you're going to end up trading him as soon as you think he's declining a little bit, or Percy Harvin. So I think it's different in football. I think in hockey and baseball, I think those are the two sports where people spend the most time in the room, in the clubhouse, together, traveling, hanging out together as a team. So I think in those two dynamics, it's probably different than it is in other sports.
By the way, we have our friend Mike Shoemaker here today, who's my driver to the airport because I'm I'm a big deal.
I thought he was Lavelle's driver.
He's Lavelle's driver too. We're big deals. You're the only one that doesn't use him.
I'm just a lowly columnist. I can't afford a driver.
But I feel bad because I started this drinking game when we walked in here, and I told Mike any time that Jim says the word jackass today, you have to take a shot. And he just took 8 shots in a row of Goldschlager and is now on the floor. So
that's great. That's what you want out of a driver.
So now I gotta Uber it to the airport. So great job there, Jim, with the jackass. I like to use the term bad guy, but jackass is probably a better term.
On the podcast you can say jackass.
That's
so
true.
Why I went that way.
I shouldn't say. That would be a bad segue. So Adrian Peterson, not jackass? That he's a jackass, but what do you? I mean, this whole thing this week. I mean, first of all, I love this story about the agent and the guy from the Vikings, whoever that guy.
Rob Brzezinski, they're capologists.
Right, they're capologists.
Yeah,
I'd like to get into a couple fights with a capologist. But what do you think of the whole thing? I mean, first of all, I don't know why their argument was in public or whatever, but do you think it was a little overblown, an argument between an agent and a front office staff member for a organization? Because as far as I know, that stuff happens on almost every phone call. It just doesn't happen at a restaurant in public.
I don't think it's overblown. I think
Okay.
it's very emblematic of the two parties,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's emblematic of Peterson's push to break away from the Vikings. I think it means something. And first of all, Rob Brzezinski, apparently somebody in the Twin Cities wrote about Rob Brzezinski having a temper or something. I mean, I've been around the guy for a long time. I've never seen that out of him. I've never heard about that out of him. I'm sure he has a little fire. Most people in sports do, but he's a behind the scenes guy who tries to stay quiet, who's very friendly, who all of us like. I think to get Rob Brzezinski into a public altercation, you had to really push him, and I think that's what's happening here. And to give you the timeline, when all this stuff went down with Peterson early last year, my prediction was he'll never play for the Vikings again. And people thought I was freaking crazy, right? And until last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, when the Vikings made their big campaign, their big PR push to say, hey, we want this guy back, until 2 weeks ago, I didn't really think – I really thought that Peterson would be someplace else. Mm-hmm. They started swaying me. I started thinking, okay, if the Vikings are this committed to bringing him back, that probably means they're willing to pay him full fare. They're willing to pay a 30-year-old running back coming off suspension full fare, $12 million, $15 million cap hit, whatever it is. I don't know how Peterson turns that down or walks away from that, especially since the organization really didn't diss him in any public way. And now what you've seen in this last week is Peterson, I think through sheer ego and being surrounded by yes people, is now feeling like he was dissed by the organization. I think he's also conflating the Vikings organization with our newspaper sending investigative reporters out to do stories on him and people like me ripping him. I think Peterson is lumping that all into Minnesotans not treating him well. First of all,
You're not a Minnesotan.
Pardon me?
You should tell him you're not a Minnesotan.
By the way, they're testing all kinds of PA systems and music here, so you're going to hear a lot of weird stuff behind me as we go here.
As long as it's not like Sam Smith or Great Big World, then we're going to have to disconnect.
Yeah, a good point.
Yeah.
Or Coldplay. Can't listen to Coldplay and do a radio show. So, I think what happens here is Peterson, he has the stereotypical great athlete God complex. He thinks he can't be questioned. So here's a guy who beats the snot out of a little boy, and instead of feeling guilty and remorseful, he feels like he's the victim. I remember writing that column back in November, December. Here's the joke. Peterson beat this crap out of a kid and thinks he's the victim, and this is the extension of that. He looked for some kind of negative from the Vikings, from the Minnesota public. He seized on that negative. Instead of the fact that the Vikings paid him his salary for playing one game last year, and instead of the fact that only one Viking executive, Kevin Warren, seemed to have any interest in not bringing him back. And I think that's the other thing Adrian sees about this. Here's Kevin Warren is like the only Vikings executive to say, hey, we don't really want him back. And then Kevin Warren gets promoted to COO. And now I think Adrian Peterson is basically, his people are running campaign to get him out of Minnesota.
What song is this?
I don't know, but it's way too freaking loud.
We can still hear you, but it sounds a little bit like you're not really at the Twins thing. You're at Club Med, and this is just a little vacation time for you.
This does sound
so old they would not let me into Club Med.
It does. It kind of has that massage envy sound.
It really does. Yeah, I hope you're
massage
enjoying it.
Hold it. That sounds like a very personal reference to massage envy. Tell me your stories.
I get backaches.
We need Starbucks and Massage Envy to be sponsors now.
Now that I have a driver, I need to hire somebody that's going to carry my bags on the road.
I think you need.
I got to tell you, if we keep this podcast,
someone who watches Downton Abbey, you need a full-time valet.
Are we going over the 30 seconds maximum where we're going to have to pay whoever this artist is in the background? Okay, I just want to make sure. Don't they know at Hammond Stadium that we're doing, the Jim Souhan podcast? I mean, did you not tell anybody this?
They're trying to drown me out before I rip anybody.
I think this is AP, at the controls down there. Just saying.
No, you're right. It's Adrian Peterson's people trying to drown me out. Damn, man.
I love the fact, by the way, I feel terrible for like Matt Venzel and our beat writer at the Star Tribune and Master and all these guys, but the fact that he will basically, not talk to the Star Tribune right now. Because of our investigative story and purposely talk to our competition and things like that. I just think that says it's more, to me, a red flag into who Adrian Peterson is as a person.
It's weenie behavior. And listen, this is your classic sports dichotomy, too. He's a great, great player. And as an athlete, he's completely admirable. Work ethic, determination, willingness to always play hard, team-oriented. He's a great football player. He's a great teammate. And off the field, we're learning he's an idiot.
He's a great poker player.
Is he?
Yeah, I see him at Canterbury a lot. I used to, at least, before he was a big deal. So, before he was the AP. So he's an idiot, but not a jackass, is what you're saying.
He's an idiot and a jackass now.
Okay.
He has jumped the shark, as they say.
Nice. Patrick Kane out for looks like 8 to 10 weeks for the Chicago Blackhawks. Jim, this really does suddenly open the door where the Wild can get into that top 3 if they get their act together after losing to the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, this is going to be an interesting last couple months for the last 6 weeks for the Wild. I'm still selfishly hoping they finish 7th or 8th, so the Wild play Nashville or Anaheim in the first round, preferably Anaheim. Selfishly,
why would that be, Mike?
I like California.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
I'm rooting for that too. I would like my first road games to be someplace warm.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and it's going to be interesting. I mean, I think the Wild play those teams pretty well too, especially the Ducks. And you almost don't want to get to the point though that you get into that top 3 and play yourself into like St. Louis in the first round. That'd be an absolute disaster.
Yeah, that would not be a good matchup. But it is interesting. As much as we talk about the Western Conference being really deep and really strong, there aren't that many teams you think the Wild would actually fear. Maybe St. Louis. I'm not sure. And you wouldn't want to play Chicago, but Chicago without Kane doesn't really scare you either.
And I actually think the Blackhawks would be that would be appropriate. Let the Wild finally beat the Blackhawks in the playoffs.
Yeah, and then the next time a puck bounces off the boards in a deciding game, they wouldn't have anybody to score.
Exactly. You want to go with Twitter questions, Jim?
Let us do that. That's always a great segment of our shows together. We get so many good questions. Let's see. Mario Lucia's status next year. If he's not signed this summer, does he have the college free agent route? That's from Bill.
I think he signs. I talked to Don Lucia about a week and a half ago, and he basically told me that it's going to be completely up to his son, which is, obviously, not a shock that he would say something like that. But, everything I hear, and the Wild usually don't try to pressure players to, leave college. It's completely up to them. But, I think the Wild really would like him to leave Notre Dame and get started on getting acclimated to being a pro. I think they believe a lot in this player. He's got size. He's up the middle. He scores in a program where it's very tough to score. They really want him to start getting some pace to his game, something that he really can't learn right now at that program. I think they want him to get started, and I think they're probably going to, at least stress that to him and say, look, I mean, look at Bukestad. He's already graduated college. I mean, Mario Lucia has 15 credits from graduating already in his third year. I think that he's in a position where he could leave and go back and get his college degree at some point.
From Barry Campbell, is the Patrick Kane injury similar to Zucker's? How does that affect Wild's chance of moving up to third place?
Well, I don't know how if he's going to need surgery. They haven't announced it yet. There's basically 2 types of broken clavicles, from what I understand. One that where it's kind of displaced, and you got to go in there and fuse the bone back together in a totally unscientific, unmedical way. I'm probably not explaining it well, and if you're a doctor out there, don't cringe if I got that wrong. But the way I understand it is there's basically 2 types. The one that keeps you out the 3-month timetable that Zucker got, and then the other one that keeps you out maybe the 2.5 months. And but like I said, I'm starting to really hear through the grapevine, through the organization, that Zucker is going to be quicker than his 3-month timeline. But this does, obviously, if Kane's out for them, it changes everything. I will say they put him on LTIR today, and what that means is now that means they know he's going to be out the rest of the way. And when you put somebody on long-term injury relief and you're at the cap ceiling, that allows you the ability to acquire somebody equal to that player's salary. And then if he comes back in the playoffs, it doesn't matter because nobody gets paid in the playoffs. So if you're over the cap, then there's no cap. So this is perfect timing for the Blackhawks from a standpoint that if you want to make an acquisition, an actual hockey trade for a high-priced player right now, they could do it. The other thing is I have been told by sources for the last about 3 days that Patrick Sharp was on the trading block. I have got to think this changes that now. And
Right.
so we'll see what that does. But again, Wild had a chance to keep pace with the Blackhawks yesterday if they had won and stayed 6 back, but now they're 8 back. Right now, the Wild just need to worry about getting in the playoffs, getting in that 8th or 7th seed. And last night wasn't a good start at that. If they're starting to, we got to catch Chicago. Why don't you catch Winnipeg first?
Another good question from Bill. Asked Michael if the Minnesota Wild are in on the Boston College goalie or the Gophers goalie, Wilcox.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think Wilcox. I don't think that's somebody that they have a lot of interest in. I like him, but I don't think it's somebody that they like. O'Connor, I think they have been. Brent Flair, the assistant GM of the Wild, just scouted the Beanpot tournament. I think he's scouted him before, but from everything I see on Twitter, at least from Darren Dreger and Bob McKenzie, who's in the know on this, is that Minnesota is not at least considered one of the front runners in that situation. They haven't mentioned them. But my guess is of the 15 to 20 teams that are allegedly at least have conversations with them, that the Wild are one of them. But I will say the Wild are very respectful in these situations. They did it with Casey Wellman and Nate Prosser, and they did it absolutely with Christian Folan last year. With Stefan DaCosta before that, although they didn't get him, with Justin Schultz, is that the Wild will not bother these guys during the season. These guys don't want to be bothered by the season. The agents or their advisors tell all the NHL teams to stay away, and the Wild usually respect that. So if the Wild are big time into them, we might not know it until the end of the season.
Question from Neener. I'm sure that's a very serious Twitter handle. With the lack
That'd be
of
funny if it was Nino, though.
Yeah. With the lack of center production, does the Wild try and make a big trade this offseason to improve its depth down the middle like Hansel?
Yeah, I mean, I still think Coyle's a better right wing than center. He obviously can't win a draw. The Wild really can't win a draw at all other than Mikko Koivu, although, again, Granlund has been much better the last 20 years, which was a similar trend that he had last year. He was terrible at the beginning of the season, got better as the season went along. But face-offs aside, which I think is a big problem, and it's one reason why this team has had a lot of interest in Antoine Vermette, who's the Arizona center that's 7th in the league in face-offs right now. I think that up the middle production-wise, it just hasn't been good enough. I mean, obviously Koivu has been much better lately, and Granlund has been much better lately. But their center production, I mean, you win up the middle, and the Wild haven't been good enough in that area. So I think it's something that they've got to look at this summer.
From Mike Burgoyne, Vanek does have a decent point total. Can he somehow be traded if the Wild retains some salary? That probably doesn't make sense, though. They kind of need a scoring even if they can't stay in the rest of his game, right?
Yeah, I mean, I know what Mike, I think Mike has long been on Twitter frustrated with Vanek's game, and I get it. I just don't think anybody's taking him. I mean, retaining salary. This is kind of like the Heatley thing, Mike. I mean, it's what he does to your lineup. That makes him very difficult. And, he's not going to age well. I mean, if you are seeing him like this now, other teams are going to know what he's going to look like in 2 or 3 years too. And it's even if the Wild retains salary, it's what he does in your lineup while he's playing, and does he hurt you? And this is one of those classic situations. I mean, this is going to be a heck of a statement and way premature, but this is one of those classic situations where my guess is they keep him around for another year and then maybe go into that third year and have to probably cut the cord because, he just look, his production, and without him, they'd probably be much worse, but his production and his game sometimes don't equal. I mean, his effort and his play along the walls is not really Minnesota Wild's style, and I just don't think it really fits long term. And so, my guess is that after buying out Backstrom this summer, they might have to cut the cord on that next summer.
Right. From Tommy Dahl, what are the implications of the new minority owner? And he does have any responsibilities, or he just financial support?
Just on the one thing with the Vanek situation, I will say with the cap going down, potentially because the players aren't going to exercise their escalator clause and the Canadian dollar. This is a big issue around the league right now, and that's another reason why somebody asked me the other day if they'd also buy out Vanek this summer, and you just all of a sudden you just can't buy out every problem that you have because then they can't get players next year. What did Tommy Dahl ask?
The implication of the new minority owner, and what does he have any responsibilities, or is he just financial backing?
Yeah, financial backing. I mean, it sounds like he has an analytical background and believes in analytics and sports. So, maybe that is something that he brings to the organization. But from what I understand, as much as he talks players and loves hockey and things like that, he's not going to be one of those meddling owners. He's also not going to be at a ton of games because apparently he's scared to fly. And in terms of his responsibilities, his responsibilities are when they need a cash call, answer the phone. And that's something that the old minority owner stopped doing. So basically, the old minority owner, who is Phil Falcone, owned at one point, I think 40-something% of the organization. And slowly but surely, Craig Leopold had to buy him out to the point that he's down below, at just above 20%. And so basically what happened is that Phil Falcone, kind of for personal reasons that have been pretty well documented, needed to sell his stake. They found Matt Hunsizer, and he basically, after a long vetting process and sitting down and Craig Leopold being signed, sold on him, and their wives meeting and getting along, who are both businessmen. That's when Craig signed off on giving Falcone permission to sell his full share to Hunsizer. And then, the difference between this sale and the other is that in the other one, Falcone had the ability to one day be the Wild's majority owner, and Hunsizer does not have that ability. In fact, he caps out at about 30%. That's as much as he can ever own of the Wild right now. He owns around 20. So, his goal is to just, when they need money, whether it's whether it's losses in cash calls or whether it's they're about to make another investment and they need money, he's just got to contribute his share.
Last Twitter question for you: does the goalie situation improve next year with Is it Mikulek from Harvard, perhaps in Iowa?
I don't know where they are in terms of if they're going to sign him. I can tell you that this is somebody that a couple years ago was not considered a prospect at all, even internally in the organization, and he's obviously had a very good year for Harvard. But this is a totally different level, and we'll see. I mean, you just never know with goaltending. They've got to shore up their minor league depth, though, at goaltending. It looks like obviously John Curry is just a veteran that has no future in Minnesota, and Johan Gustafsson just looks like a guy that's going to eventually flame out. Now they have a guy in Europe that's having a real good year that they drafted in last year, and they'll just have to figure it out. But slowly but surely they're going to have to get some goalies in Iowa to continue to develop. Because it looks like Darcy Kemper's development is going to be stalled because he's just never going to get to play as a young goalie. And that's why I really think there's going to come a point where the Wild are going to try to use him as an asset and move him. Also for his sake. The Wild don't want to ruin this kid. And this kid's in a bad position right now because of, the fact that his waiver, expired at 14 games. He can't play. And because Dubnyk's playing every night, he's just sitting, getting dusty. And it's just a bad situation for this guy. So my guess is, out of the goodness of Chuck Fletcher's heart at some point, he's probably going to have to move Darcy Kemper. Might not be sooner, though. I mean, you might go into next year and want a Dubnyk-Kemper, tandem, but I just don't know. I actually feel bad for Darcy that he's gotten in this situation.
Last 7 minutes of the show. Let's do it in a blur. Let's talk KG, and then I want to hear if you have any coffee or travel disaster stories. And then let's wrap up with any broadcast or music thoughts you have. KG, what's it like? I mean, I'm not complaining. I'm in spring training. I love it. But it is weird to be here when the biggest story in Minnesota sports is Kevin Garnett's return. What's it like there?
Well, the Star Tribune had 2 open pages today, and somehow I got both my stories in the paper. It's all KG all the time now. I do think it's just he's such a saint that he's finally willing to play for them after a week and a half or whatever the hell it's the trade. That was nice of him to show up and actually
play and show up.
Yeah, that was nice of him to show up, meet with the media. Finally, meet with the media a week after the trade. Like, my goodness. It's unbelievable. I've never.
That's when you get in a star. When you get in the sport where the stars are international superstars.
Yeah. Well, so and obviously, I mean, we had some great art in the paper today by Jerry Holt of fans just lining up and gobbling up tickets and things like that. So that Target Center is going to just be an absolute madhouse tonight. And hey, good for the Wolves to gain some attention in this town right now. And it looks like the future is getting brighter for them in terms of the way that Wiggins is developing this year, and Rubio and some of the other young talent that they got there.
Absolutely, and I'm on record. I think Garnett coming back is great, not because of what he's going to do as a player, but because he's a guy who can teach Wiggins what it takes to be an NBA star, and he's the only NBA star in the history of the NBA who will tell Wiggins, you can stay in Minnesota, it's okay. You don't have to go chase dollars or go live someplace else. Any coffee or travel disaster stories?
No, but I'm on my fifth today. Travel disaster stories. I'm trying to think. I feel like I did have something on this last road trip.
Well, you always have something.
Yeah,
the question is whether you can remember it or not.
It was God. It was. Yeah, I know. That's exactly right. It was something with WestJet. But I cannot remember it. It was. Oh, yeah. I probably shouldn't say it. I lost my temper on an agent, but that was okay.
What did you think? Did you call him a jackass?
No, but he deserved it. It was just It was incompetence. It was in Vancouver. Just incompetence at its finest. In terms of incompetence.
well said, Michael.
I just couldn't believe that a major corporation had just incompetence like this. So I just let them know, as an avid traveler who is an expert, this is incompetent. That's what I told them.
I'm glad you did.
Their allocation of staff was absurd one morning. So that's it. That was it.
All right, any music or TV or movie thoughts?
No, I have a new song that's on my hated list. Sam Smith's "I'll Lay You Down." It's one of the worst songs that's ever been popped out of a vocal cord.
By who?
Sam Smith, the guy that is going to just absolutely be in our ears for the ever now because he won a Grammy with a song that's equally as awful. But this song is as bad as it is the most whining, nasal. I mean, just when you're done here, go on YouTube and Sam Smith. I think it's "I'll Lay You Down." It's just on Cities 97 incessantly now, and it's just it's one of those songs that honestly I almost crashed the first time I heard it, and the second time I heard it, I broke my thumb changing the channel.
That's what we like about you, Michael. You never overreact.
I know. It's just please don't. If you're about to play it, Sean. I'm
totally gonna do it.
Yeah, please. Actually, you could play it. I want Jim to hear this awful song.
Oh, good. I'll give you my quick one. I watched the end of Deadwood. I've been watching that on flights lately, and I'm crushed that they did not renew it after the third season. It was just leading up to all kinds of great, gory, wild, crazy crap.
It's like Arrested Development.
It's such a great series. I'm so sad it ended after 3 seasons. In terms of music, I've started getting back into John Haidt, Hiatt, John Haidt, who does kind of some great roots rock country, just gravelly blues type stuff. I don't love all of his stuff, but his good stuff is really good.
I had a good Twitter question the other day, Jim. During the outdoor game in California, they had John Fogerty. And they had Melissa Etheridge, 2 Northern California people singing between periods. And so I asked, who should the NHL go after for state of Minnesota musical stars for next year's outdoor game? Who would be your top 2 or 3 choices?
Well, your top choice is Prince, but he wouldn't do it because he wouldn't want his precious to get cold. And since Prince wouldn't do it, then I would go. I'm biased. I want Jayhawks.
Yeah,
I know them. I love them. I think they're great. They're very underrated. Replacements would be another great choice. Hold Steady has Minneapolis roots. I would go try to get 2 of those 3.
Yeah, I like Trampled by Turtles. Hear this.
That's a good, very good pick.
Here,
yeah,
listen to this. Listen to this,
group,
Jim. Listen. Oh my God. I'm missing you tonight. This emptiness is inside. These tears, they tell.
Sorry, they're doing construction here during my show. So
well, you know what? I would rather listen to that jackhammer in the background 1 foot than have to listen to another second of that awful, awful Sam Smith song.
Souhan, Unfiltered.
Sean.
I can
see if your live karaoke band will sing that, do that one. I guarantee they'd throw you out of the bar.
Michael Russo is not.
That's awesome. I'm ending the show on that note.
Yeah, Jim, you have to go. Jim, at some point.
My sugar mountain drink again and end the show. Let's once again thank our sponsors, the local Kieran's Irish Pub, O'Gara's Bar and Grill in St. Paul, Live and Social Network. Sean, what am I leaving out?
Just a couple other shows to mention. Foodie Friday with BT, formerly of Cities 97 and now on Go 96, but he does Foodie Friday with his daughter Lydia. Great Northern Sex Cast brought to you by FantasyGifts.com. Get all your 50 Shades
I want to hear
of Grey
Russo on the
stuff.
Sex Cast.
Oh, Russo's totally going to guest. As soon as the Wild season's over, he's going to do that.
Absolutely.
The Julius Collins and Sean Bernard show, that's a fan favorite right there.
Like half the show.
Nice. Paul Mercurio, 2-time Emmy winner, Peabody Award winner. He is on the network now at paulmercurio.com. And The Focus Radio is the last one to mention. The Focus Radio is a women's business show, so check that out as well on the Alive and Social Network.
And I think we haven't confirmed it, but I think Jim and I next are going to probably come about Tuesday afternoon at some point between the Wild's morning skate and its game against Ottawa. Jim, have a great time down there. Maybe we get Lavelli Neal III on as a guest at some point. That'd be awesome.
He's too big a celebrity. He's like Garnett. You got to plan a weekend half ahead of time just to get him to show up.
Jim, have a great time down there. I'm going to Nashville. See you later.
Thanks, bud. See ya.
Looking like a train wreck, wearing too much makeup.